Species. Unite.
In terms of specialized AI within these industries, they're, years and years ahead of where the animal movement currently is. And factory farms are increasingly using AI as well to do things like predicting the growth rate of chickens so that they can set the environmental variables up perfectly to exploit these animals as efficiently as possible.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Novogratz. This is Species Unite. We have a favor to ask. If you like today's episode and you have a spare minute, could you please rate and review Species Unite on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts? It really helps people to find the show. This conversation is with Sam Tucker. Sam is the founder of OpenPause, a nonprofit aimed at creating ethically aligned AI systems. And Sam is the creator of Veg3, an AI chatbot promoting animal rights. I asked Sam to come on the show because I want to understand how we, Species Unite, and other organizations like us can be using AI to be way more effective.
Thank you for inviting me on.
I'm super excited to have you on. So thank you, Sam. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got here and how all this started?
For sure. So I'm going to try to compact a 15-year story into, less than a minute. So bear with me. I've been involved in animal advocacy a long time, since I was 11 years old. I explored a lot of different styles of activism. Eventually that led me towards studying communications. That led to a job with Vegan Outreach. And one thing that I sort of was noticing throughout this whole process was the issue of scalability with any approach, especially one-on-one interactions in person when it came to outreach. You might go to a university and you can hand out 1,000 leaflets. You can talk to maybe anywhere from 10 to 100 students. But then you can go on Facebook and you can post something that reaches 10 times as many people overnight. So I became quite convinced that digital media was an important approach for the movement. So I retrained in that. I started a vegan digital marketing agency working with, vegan businesses and animal rights charities. And we started implementing AI a lot within our own workflows at first in order to, make our own work more efficient. But we started to realize that the tools that currently existed really didn't understand vegan ethics well. So we had one client, for example, Vegan Style, where we were asking it to write advertising copy for a vegan shoe, and it would say things like, this beautiful cow skin leather, and it just completely did not understand what we were talking about. So that's how I kind of got into AI and developing tools. Originally, it was very much an internal thing for our clients within our marketing agency, but I quickly realized this tool would have a lot more impact if we released it to the public. So that's when we started releasing Veg3. And then again, I kind of realized that this being sort of a for-profit business was again another limitation, and that this tool could have a lot more impact for the animal movement if it was freely available and open source. So that's when I started OpenPause to build open source AI for the animal movement.
Because most of them, outside of you guys, aren't actually thinking about any sort of animal ethics when it comes to AI, right?
100%. So there's a huge lack of awareness of animal issues within AI in general. So there's currently no major AI labs anywhere in the world that even mention animals in their ethical guidelines. And there's only one country in the world that mentions AI's effect on animals in their legislation. So we definitely have a long way to go in terms of getting animals, considered and their interests respected by these systems.
What country is that?
It's Serbia. So they have a mention. Yeah, so it's a very brief mention, but it's better than nothing. They basically have a line in their ethical guidelines that says something like AI systems should consider the well-being of people, animals, and the environment.
That's very cool. But it's amazing no one else does that. There's a lot of talk within the animal movement about how AI can and already is being used for evil, right? From factory farms down the line. Will you talk a bit about that, like kind of what we're up against on that side of AI?
100%. So the unfortunate reality is that the industries that harm animals are so much further ahead than the animal movement is in terms of their integration of AI. So you take companies like McDonald's, as early as 2019, they were actually purchasing their own artificial intelligence labs. So we're not even talking about like implementing another technology. We're talking about owning their own AI labs. And they were using that lab to do things like automating their digital menu in order to predict, how to sell as many animal products as possible, depending on who they're advertising to, depending on the day. Within, more directly within animal agriculture, you have companies like JBS that use AI in their slaughterhouses to optimize the sorting of carcasses to make them more efficient. And factory farms are increasingly using AI as well to do things like predicting the growth rate of chickens so that they can set the environmental variables up perfectly to exploit these animals as efficiently as possible. In terms of specialized AI within these industries, they're, years and years ahead of where the animal movement currently is. And in terms of those major AI tools as well, every major AI tool available at the moment has a measurable and provable speciesist bias. So there's a lot of research papers that have come out on this where, you prompt the systems asking them questions regarding cats and dogs and then other questions regarding pigs and chickens. And there's a measurable, provable bias in all of these systems. So unfortunately, the situation for AI is very bad for animals at the moment. And that's why, organizations like ours are working to change it.
I mean, it's not completely shocking that it's biased against cows and pigs and chickens, considering that humans are biased against them.
Of course.
But it's really disturbing. And I think with factory farms and slaughterhouses, everything's always been about bigger, better, faster, right? Not better, but bigger, faster. And AI is just going to make everything bigger, faster. It's just more death. It's going to make everything they're doing now just worse, right? Like bigger, faster.
100%. AI is great at optimizing for any goal. And so it'll optimize for that goal at the expense of everything else. So when factory farms and slaughterhouses are implementing AI, their goal obviously is not to introduce these systems to make things better for animals. Their goal is to make more profit. So therefore, it's going to optimize for that at the expense of everything else.
What do we do about that? Like, is there anything we can do about that? And except just keep fighting the good fight like we already are, in the sense of what they're doing, in slaughterhouses.
I think we do have a few different options. I think more generally within AI, there's a lot of opportunities to work with these AI labs to increase the amount that they care about animals. So some examples of that with like the work we do, we're building data sets where humans rank, for example, different responses and how they affect animals. And we're planning to open source that data set, share it with labs, and also publish research, for example, on how reducing the speciesist bias in these models also affects things like, does it make the AI systems generally safer? Does it reduce biases against other humans? Because we know these things are correlated in humans, so there's a good chance they'll correlate in machines as well. So that's sort of our theory of change, I guess, when it comes to general AI. And when it comes to AI in factory farms and slaughterhouses specifically, I think we really need political campaigning around this. We need to organize the animal rights movement to, understand how these systems are being used and the effect they're having on animals. And hopefully work to ban it from being used in ways that are harmful for animals. And I think this is something that we're likely to be able to make some progress on, because I think, whenever you're looking at a political ask, you're essentially trying to find these broad coalitions of sort of unlikely allies. So I think this is something that can unite people from across the political spectrum, because it's not just an animal issue. A lot of people are concerned about, AI taking jobs, for example. So I think that there are ways that we can phrase this that is likely to gather some political support.
Good. We need to, because it's very scary.
It is.
Let's talk about some of the positives then. In terms of using AI for good when it comes to animals and advocacy and marketing for vegan organizations, take me through it a little bit, like how that all works.
Yeah, for sure. In terms of, a framework that I like to think about this within is I always talk about AI in the movement as having three parts that work best when they're in unison. So one is generation, the other is prediction, and the third is automation. So AI is a really great tool for generating content. We've seen this with systems like ChatGPT, with writing text, systems like Midjourney for creating images. But a lot of people aren't aware that AI also has this really long history of being great at predicting things. So, for example, we can train models to predict, how likely it is that certain digital ads will get whatever click-through rate. And we could also do the same thing within the animal movement of training models to predict how likely a campaign is to be successful, for example, or how likely it is that a certain message is going to result in dietary change or a corporate commitment. So if we combine these two, we have a system that generates content, another system that predicts the performance. We can then automate all sorts of different activities within our organizations, because not only are we creating the content with AI, but we actually have sort of a check and balance to make sure that that content's going to do well before we actually put it out there.
Okay, so like we at Species Unite, we do a few things, like a few campaigns every year, challenges, like a plant-based 30-day challenge and this Action for Animals 30-day challenge and a few others. And people really love Action for Animals, and we have thousands and thousands of people sign up. They usually stay through the whole thing, like over 90%, and it's very successful. For like 5 years, we've been doing a 30-day plant-based challenge a few times a year. It is so hard to get people to sign up. So how would I use AI to get people? And we have a super active community, and it's very big. Like, how would AI make this work a lot better?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think I would struggle to think of any type of organization within the movement that wouldn't benefit from using AI in some way. So in terms of that specific example, I think that predictive models based on historical data are really powerful here. So you could say load in, your social media analytics or maybe your digital advertising analytics, and you can actually train models based on that are going to predict how likely it is that someone's going to sign up and what the cost per sign up would be. So what you could then do is use the generative models to create a lot of variations of content and use the predictive model to actually test that content before it goes live. So this is something we're seeing, when animal organizations implement this, it just saves a lot of time on split testing content or, the whole sort of social media game of, throwing things at a wall and seeing what sticks. You can kind of skip that guessing phase and get straight into content that's going to achieve results. And another thing that we're seeing within some animal organizations that are running different kinds of vegan challenges, for example, is a lot of them have their mentors actually using some of our tools now. So they can chat to the system to really quickly find, links to high quality information with whatever, their mentees might be asking them about. And we're also seeing organizations building chatbots based on these systems so that it can essentially automate the process of having a mentor.
Would we use Veg3 for that? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so Veg3 is definitely a good tool for this, but also for nonprofits with Open Pause, like we offer that technical implementation as a service for free. So, we exist purely to help the animal organization to, implement these kind of tools. So yeah, I think for nonprofits, it'd be best to talk to Open Pause, and then for individuals and businesses, best to look into Veg3.
And talk a little bit about Veg3 and like why you built it and what it actually does.
Yeah, for sure. It's a chatbot that just understands veganism at a much deeper level than any other chatbot. So it's connected to a huge database of information that's relevant to veganism and animal rights, a lot of like high quality scientific studies, and it uses that information along with any other information you give it about what you're trying to do. So for new vegans, we find that a lot of people are using it for generating recipes. They can do things like take a photo with their phone of their pantry and get Veg3 to create recipes automatically based on what's there. They can take photos of various products in the supermarket, ask if it's vegan, Veg3 will give a response. They can also, an interesting one that we're seeing a lot is a lot of people just use it as a supportive friend. A lot of people who are new to veganism, they might not know a lot of vegans, and, there might be things that come about in their day-to-day lives, people that don't understand, difficult conversations they have. So a lot of people are also using it, to rant about those situations and to get guidance on how to better approach them in the future.
Give me an example.
So let's say, you have the sort of infamous uncle at Thanksgiving that really just doesn't get veganism and just, goes off about it. And, partly you need someone to vent to who's actually going to understand. And the other part is you want to know how to respond to that situation better in the future in order to educate that potential uncle. So in these situations, people can just chat with Veg3 just like they would, sending a messenger to a friend. And yeah, especially I think for new vegans who haven't built up that social circle, that can be really useful. And I think, there's a lot of research too that shows that those social connections are actually one of the main things that keep people vegan in the long term. So, I think for people that don't have it, like AI can actually play a role there as well.
If I say to Veg3, like, oh my God, my uncle just said plants have feelings too, or something like that, what does Veg3 say back to me that like supports me? Like, how does it make me feel supported?
Yeah, well, this is going to be different for every single person that uses it because Veg3 isn't giving, generic responses to questions. Sure. It's basically learning from the conversations that you have over time, and it's learning from what you input into the instructions as well. So it really depends on, how people want to use it. So some people, they might not, want the emotional support from a chatbot. So they might give instructions like, just give me like factual data, give me links to scientific studies, and Veg3 can happily do that. And for other people, they want to talk to it, more like in a friendly way. So Veg3 is capable of that as well.
I'd love it. I love this recipe thing too, that you just show your pantry.
Yeah, I definitely have used that myself a fair amount.
Are there other things like that?
Yeah, so one of the cool things about Veg3 is it understands both text and images. So that opens up a lot of different possibilities because, you can just take photos. What I've done with it, I find it useful for is if I ever get anti-vegan comments, I just take a screenshot and I load that to Veg3 and it'll automatically write a reply for me. That'll be, linked with all of the research. So I can just copy and paste that instead of, wasting time and energy on anti-vegan trolls. I can just outsource that to an AI.
And are you mostly working with organizations or individuals or both?
Definitely both. So with Veg3, it's primarily individuals that use it. And with OpenPause, we're mostly working one-on-one with organizations, generally for more sort of like advanced use cases. So Veg3 is essentially like a software. It's, anyone can go up and create a free account and use it straight away. With OpenPause, we're providing a much more in-depth level of technical service to organizations. So we're actually doing a lot of setup that's specific to the campaigns they're working on.
Talk to me about like some of the organizations that you've worked with, like where they were and how AI has changed them or helped them.
Yeah, so one of the most recent ones that we've been working with is an awesome organization called Freedom Food Alliance. So they exist to monitor misinformation and disinformation published by the animal industry and to detect and respond to that as quickly as possible. So what we've done is we've created an AI-powered automation that monitors the internet for any signs of misinformation from the animal industry. Whenever it detects it, it automatically writes up a response, and then that saves it internally, ready for their researchers to go and fact check and publish live. So it means that they're able to respond to this information a lot quicker.
Very cool. What are you most excited about with everything you're doing now?
So I think the thing that I'm most excited about is training an AI on the collective knowledge of our whole movement. So a problem that I see is that as a movement, we do have a lot of data about what works and what doesn't, but it's very siloed. All of the different organizations, we have our own data that we track, but I think that we can learn so much more if we look at the aggregate of all of the data that the movement holds. And so this is what we're actively building at the moment. We're talking to a lot of organizations, sharing data, and we're going to train an AI model that's based on all of that. So I think it's going to be so powerful at doing things like predicting performance, for example, because it's not just going to be looking at one organization's historical data. It's going to look at trends across all of it. And it's also going to work as a better generative tool because it's going to have just so much more knowledge. And so the responses it gives are going to be much more rooted in factual information that's specific to our movement, rather than generic tools that sometimes can, hallucinate and make things up when it comes to animal advocacy because it's such a small part of the data they were trained on.
But I think one of the things with our movement that we need the most is to broaden it.
100%.
We're pretty small, and it's a really big issue, and we're a pretty small movement in relative to what's happening, right? And to how many billions of animals are killed, every year. Do you see potential for AI broadening the movement in terms of making it way more inclusive?
Yeah, I definitely think that there's a role for AI there. So I think AI is really great at optimizing for any goal that you give it. So if our goal is, literally recruit more people into the movement, encourage more people to remove animal products from their diet and lifestyle, then if we have data on that, we can train AI to achieve it. So there's also some really interesting research that shows that artificial intelligence already, the technology we have today, is better at persuading people on social and political issues than other humans are. So that's kind of scary, but it's also, potentially beneficial if we are to use this technology within our movement. So the way they tested this essentially is they had people talk to either an artificial intelligence system or to a human through a chatbot, and they didn't know which they were talking to. And they found by quite a significant margin, the AI was better at shifting people's opinions. So I think as a movement, if we're using tools like this, we're going to be more effective. And also I think that as far as inclusion goes, there's so many opportunities for AI to say personalize things to people more, to translate content, for example. So I think, a lot of the animal rights content that exists is, primarily in English. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to use AI to reach, a much broader sort of global majority.
Why do you think it is that people respond better to AI than to humans in terms of being persuaded?
Yeah, I think that there's a few possibilities. I think the most likely is probably that the artificial intelligence doesn't have the sort of emotional burnout that activists get sometimes. The AI can be asked 10,000 times where it gets its protein from, and it's never going to get sick of that. It's never going to give a smart ass reply. It's always just going to, answer it factually. So I think that's a huge part of it. And I think another part of it as well is just that AI can understand so much more data than humans can. Think about all of the things that we learn within our whole lifetime as a human versus the entirety of the text that exists on the internet. So an AI can actually learn from and understand that entire text corpus, whereas, humans, we're limited to our own individual experience and learning. So I think it's probably the combination of the two. And then also the fact that AI is just great at optimizing for whatever goal you want it to optimize for. So we've already seen for a really long time AIs that outperform humans in specific tasks. Like we had an artificial intelligence beat the world chess champion decades ago. This is not new technology. This is old technology before ChatGPT or anyone, was talking about these kind of systems. So yeah, I think it's the combination of those three things. It's great at optimizing for specific goals. It can understand a lot of data, and it doesn't react, emotionally.
I'm kind of embarrassed we haven't been on the ball at all about this. But now that I've spoken to you, we will be getting in touch with you. And I hope a lot of people listening will as well, whether it's for an organization or an individual. And I also think it's probably a great tool for people who are just curious about eating plant-based or vegan, not quite sold on it, but just want to learn more.
100%. I think Veg3 especially is a really great tool for that. We actually have a bunch of different kind of default instructions we give, and one of them is all around sort of lifestyle support. So that one's a really great tool to talk to for anyone who's new to it or, even just curious about it. And yeah, we actually do have a lot of users who are sort of very early on in their vegan journey, who are just kind of thinking about it. Some people, they even just kind of use Veg3 to debate to, like maybe they have some questions about veganism and they kind of feel like awkward talking to it about that, with their vegan friend because they don't want to, hurt feelings, for example. So Veg3 can be a great tool even for that, even if you're just curious from almost a negative perspective and you have some criticisms of veganism, give it a go, try talk to the tools. And it can be a really great way to learn about these things in a less personal way, I think.
I love it. Thank you so much for putting these in the world. And we desperately need both. So I love it. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
To learn more about Sam and OpenPause and Veg3, go to our website, speciesunite.com. We will have links to everything. If you have a spare moment and could do us a favor, please subscribe, rate, review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. It really helps people find the show. We are on Facebook and Instagram at Species Unite. I would like to thank everyone at Species Unite, including Gary Knudsen, Caitlin Pierce, Amy Jones, Paul Healy, Santina Polke-Link, Sam Kosel, and Anna Kallner, who wrote and performed today's music. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful day.